Gluten-free, coast to coast with Jess and Nick.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the podcast. We are here today, actually, in Nick's gluten-free kitchen. I am here on the East Coast, just celebrating Thanksgiving with the family, and Jess came over to cook for Nick's gluten-free kitchen, so she'll be doing that while we record today. But today, we're going to be talking about diagnosis stories, and we're going to start with mine, and then we'll do hers in a different episode. But we're going to start off with how I was diagnosed and how that all came true. But just what you cooking today?
So we're launching our holiday menu this weekend at the Kittery Winter Market, which is super cool. We're adding a ton of fun stuff. The holidays can be a really tricky time to have a special diet, so we're launching a ton of fun stuff. Gingerbread house kits, but right now I'm making sugar cookies, which are the original recipe that I tried to make. I really wanted to replicate the Loft House cookies that you get at the grocery store. That are thick and soft, and then have a ton of frosting. I think they're pretty divisive dessert. People either love them or they hate them, but this is my favorite, so we're getting to bring them back for the holidays, and it's really exciting. Before we started rolling, I was telling you, Nick, about how we're a year out from when Ryan and I decided that we wanted to do this, and we were committed to sharing all the baking and cooking that we had figured out since you were diagnosed, and it's really exciting. So yeah, we used to be able to sit down and podcast, but now you want to multitask, and I think it's kind of cool because you can see, if you're watching this on YouTube, you can see a little bit of behind the scenes of how we do what we do. So but yeah, speaking of recipes since diagnosis, we can definitely jump in. I do want to start with a quick backstory. Nick's gluten-free kitchen is a thing because Nick was diagnosed first with celiac, and we'll get into you were young, but also old enough to know what food you were missing.
What food was?
yeah. So we started testing recipes 12 years ago now, to sort of help with that mental health piece of a special diet and getting to create all the things that you love. So Nick, where do we start with your diagnosis story?
So I think I always make it more dramatic than it actually is, because when I was
Tell me more about that.
well, only because when I was in high school, right, we were going through, it was me, but the family was on board.
I was there.
Yeah, they were there. I'd been sick with, this or that. It was all gastro related. I was in and out of different, gastroenterologists, and I was doing endoscopies and stuff, and we really couldn't figure out what it was. So on my fourth endoscopy, I had gone into our doctor out here, who my entire family sees now because of
Shout out Dr. Hyatt.
Yeah, Dr. Hyatt.
Atlantic Digestive.
Yeah. Over in Portsmouth, real good guy, but he just went down a little further in his endoscopy, and he found out that I had celiac. But to me, there was a lot more to it than that, and this is where I think I get a little bit more dramatic and storytelly.
Well, yeah, I think so.
Because that's the real short version, but there was more to it.
And I think you're underselling it, because I wanted to start. Nick was born January 4th, 1995, on a cold winter's day in Portsmouth, New Hampshire.
Yeah.
Because that's when I feel your story, your medical story, it's not particularly celiac, but I think a lot of people will relate to the fact that it's hardly ever just celiac.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, because that's the thing. I wasn't going to the hospital and getting all these endoscopies for celiac. Celiac doesn't give you the symptoms I was having. So, in high school, I was getting food stuck in my esophagus every time I'd eat. Real bad news bears situation. So, I was going on, there was one time I went on an elimination diet where, you took out, basically gluten, but then, soy.
Oh, no. So you had to eliminate all top 8 allergens. So I think the ones that were hardest as a teenager was, soy, dairy, and gluten.
Yeah.
Because you can, shellfish.
Well, and soy's in everything.
Yeah.
Eating gluten-free is hard. I think eating soy-free.
Soy-free, yeah.
Is way more difficult because they just slide that into everything.
There's soy in sprinkles.
Yeah, see, why?
Exactly.
You know? So, like, I went through one of those diets, and my first gastro was like, didn't find out what you're allergic to, didn't find out what's causing your, basically, esophagus to, what was happening is that I have an allergic reaction, my esophagus would tighten up, and then that would cause, food to get stuck, food impaction. And, so she's like, all right, none of those allergens was it. Let's do, I did a month-long liquid diet where I did not eat any solid food for a month.
We're going to go into that more.
Yeah, and then basically, same thing though happened. The doctor was like, Nick, we didn't find out what you're allergic to. So it was really at that point, because that was endoscopy number 3, where we're just like, you know what, we're gonna go see someone else. You did great.
Or not.
Yeah, I mean, she was a lovely woman up in Portland, Maine, but she just, I don't know, didn't find anything out. So why am I gonna go back to you?
Well, so, and let's pause for a second too, like timeline-wise. So, I jokingly say you were born, and that's when it started, but like, you were sick when you were born, and we're at Boston Children's for a little while, totally unrelated to any digestive stuff, but then, you know, how old were you? Do you remember when you were like, I don't feel great? Because I have a memory of, I was at the doctor for like strep or something, and you were like, I have a French fry stuck in my throat, and they were like, okay. But I think that, I mean, you were maybe like 7 at that time.
I think growing up, I had just had a lot of different ailments that, like, looking back, was probably just symptoms of being gluten-free or
Needing to be.
Yeah, or you know, an allergen that I'd been eating, you know, something like that.
Yeah.
I mean, all through college, I woke up nauseous every morning, and even my lovely doctors were like, "Oh, are you pregnant?" I was like, "You're my doctor. Let's not make these jokes." But no, so like I woke up sick every day too, and that was already, thing is though, I was already gluten free at that point. But,
right. Well, that's, I think, goes with that, like, the comorbidity of celiac. So, do you think it was always celiac? Because we talk a lot about, like, what, like, sparked celiac. Because, like, for those of you who don't know, celiac is genetic, and you can carry the gene and not have celiac disease, which I did for 23 years. But it can be turned on at any time, which is what makes it like an autoimmune. It's triggered in your body. It can be triggered by a stress, like a stressor, like an external environmental stressor. It can be triggered by being sick. So, you know, there's a lot of theories about what gave you celiac. Do you feel like you were born with it? Like when you had your blood transfusion, that triggered it? Or do you feel like it was more liquid diet?
It's funny. I always tried to, you know, be like, oh, it must have been the liquid diet. Like you know, I lost like 15 pounds in a month.
Well, your kidneys started to shut down too.
Yeah, I mean, it made me real sick. But like looking back at photos of me then.
Yeah.
I mean, I was like, I looked malnourished. You know, it wasn't anything that, like, to me, like there had already been something there.
Yeah.
That we were missing.
Yeah, I mean, you were pretty underweight.
Yeah, I mean, I was this height in 8th grade, and I didn't gain more than 5 pounds all through high school. So to me, there was something there. I always wanted it to be the liquid diet, because I'm like, oh yeah, that sucked. Of course that gave me celiac, but I was going through the liquid diet to see what was wrong with me in the first place.
Right. So you are, 7 years old, you're saying there's a French fry stuck in my throat, because we haven't talked about that diagnosis yet, like what that is. So you are diagnosed with celiac disease, but what other diagnoses do you have?
I also have the eosinophilic esophagitis, which is where something causes my esophagus to close up, causing food to get stuck. For a while, they were like, oh, you might have Barrett's.
Yep.
Which is a esophageal issue where acid reflux builds up. But that one was like confirmed by one doctor and not another. I think that's it.
Yeah. So that's all. But I specifically talking about EE, and that is common in the celiac community. It's also really common in the gluten-free community, and that idea that eating gluten-free can help with the eosinophils. So those are the rings in your esophagus, and that it can inflame them, making strictures and tightening up around food if you're eating that allergen. So that was what you were diagnosed with first. I mean, you started with your pediatrician, and they said, we're not super sure what's going on. I think they were worried, I remember, that it might be your heart, because you would describe like tightness behind your heart, which was your esophagus.
Yeah. I mean...
Do you remember that?
I mean, I don't remember. A lot of it was a blur. I mean, it was like literally, was it my sophomore year into my junior year where I felt like I was being tested every other day. I mean, they strapped 30 foods to my back one time to see if I would have a physical allergic reaction to food. So for 3 days in the middle of August, I got, 30 foods strapped to my back.
Like pureed food. So you had like peanut butter, pureed carrots, like...
Yeah, it was like a lot of like baby food almost.
It was a lot of baby food.
Just like strapped to my back. And again, nothing came of that, but it was like, there was a whole stretch of time where I felt like I was just being poked and prodded all the time.
Right.
So like, I think I do like black out a lot of those. I mean, I'm sure I was saying it was like tightness in my heart, but...
Well, when you think about it, right, so it's like right here is where your esophagus will go down. And so if you're feeling strictures in your esophagus when food's going down at, 12, that's... Your heart is here.
Yeah.
Your heart's not actually here, but like that...
The way I was describing it, I was probably like, oh yeah, like that's a...
Yeah, so I think the pediatrician at that point was like, you need to see a specialist. You never saw a cardiologist, though.
No.
To my knowledge.
No, because I think that, like, my first endoscopy with her, like, the biopsy came back negative, but she was like, that looks way too much like EE for it to not be EE.
Yeah.
So I don't think we went any further because that's what's causing the tightness. Mm-hmm. But yeah, so I mean, I went through all that.
So yeah, the pediatrician refers you up to Main Med to go to the pediatric gastroenterologist, and that's where you had your first endoscopy.
Yep.
And was it that first endoscopy that they got the eosinophilic esophagitis diagnosis?
Well, so here's the thing. Like so to be EE, you have to have like 15 parts per million of eosinophils and like one biopsy sample. Something along those lines. I may have just made that number up, but I think it's 15. Yeah. And that kept coming back negative. It was only like 10 or something like that. But if you looked at a photo of my esophagus, it was clearly the signs of EE. Like you had, the rings in it. You had, you could see that it just wasn't right. I mean, the doctors know the actual terms, but like if you put a esophagus and my esophagus side by side, you're like, oh, that kid, not it.
Yeah.
So yeah, from the jump, she's like, this is what it is. I can't figure out why it's not coming back positive.
Yeah, with the biopsy.
Yeah. So we just kind of let it go and said I had it from day one.
Yeah, and did they put you on omeprazole for that, or was there anything?
I was on omeprazole. Well, I took an inhaler. Yeah. For a while, but that had to be more like it was like swallowed almost. So instead of like inhaling it, I'd like spray it onto my tongue and then just like kind of swallow it. But it's tough because it's an inhaler. So
yeah, and I think it was like a steroid inhaler.
Yeah.
That people for asthma would need in their lungs, but they wanted you to have the steroids in your esophagus.
So I would swallow it, and that seemed to work for a while, and then I don't know if it was Dr. Hyatt. When I switched my gastro, he's like, you got a lot of acid reflux in there too. So I started taking omeprazole, and that has basically cured my EE. Because I don't have symptoms of that anymore, and I know like when I'm not taking EE,
You're not taking
omeprazole. When I'm taking omeprazole, my EE comes back where like food will get stuck or just is really uncomfortable. So.
Right.
Basically, like, I would say this too is like I found celiac on accident.
Yes. So
like at no point were they looking for celiac. They're like, oh, he's just sick with other things. Let's try to figure out what's causing the EE or what's causing X, Y, and Z, and they accidentally stumbled upon celiac.
Right. So you're at Maine Med. Mm-hmm. At Maine Med, they do the EE diagnosis.
Yep.
And then she sends you to an allergist. That's where you get the typical the pricks on your arms to see. You get the food strapped to your back. And this was all to figure out what allergen might be causing the strictures. Do you remember how much that came back with? Like what you were allergic to and what you had to cut out?
The only thing dude found, and from this point on, like, I've despised allergists because the guy, he actually did nothing. He just, like, read the results that the nurses did.
Yeah.
But the only thing, I mean, because he did the prick test on my arms. He did it on my back, like 20 different tests on my back. And the only thing that, like, remotely had a sign of, like, inflammation was chicken.
Yep.
So he's like, oh, you are now allergic to all fowl, all birds. So, you know, I couldn't have turkey at that Thanksgiving. I couldn't have, you know, chicken nuggets ever. Oh. And I wasn't allergic to it. Like, it was like a little inflamed, and I think he just wanted an answer or to be able to give us something. And he said chicken, and I think, like, we showed Dr. Hyatt that, and he's like, yeah, you're not allergic.
Right.
So,
well, there was chicken, there was dust mites.
Oh, okay, yeah. So there was also, like, because to me, those, like, I can't worry about them. Like, because chicken, I was like, oh man, I have to cut chicken out of my diet. It was like dust mites, cat and dog saliva, not their dander, and I'm like, when am I getting that in my mouth?
But so, yes, I agree, and especially, like, with what we're talking about with celiac and stuff, but in terms of, like, why I want to share our diagnosis stories is what you went through with that. So after that was found, you had to clean your room with an N95 mask because there was dust in the air when you'd clean, and our dog had to go stay somewhere else for a month to see if
our cat and dog.
The cat did? Well,
I think the cat went to the Mativiers and the dog went to
our cousin Rachel.
Yeah. So we had no animals in the house. Well, and then Pete went somewhere too.
I don't think Pete was with us anymore, was he?
Oh, gosh.
Ooh, sorry, Mom.
Alright, Pete. But yeah, either way, like, our dogs, our animals had to leave.
Pete died my junior year at Colby Sawyer.
See, this is when it was all blur, because that would have made me a sophomore. No, I was a junior in high school. Either way, not the point of the story.
We'll
figure out when our dog died. But
right, so, like, your dog had to leave.
Yeah.
And it's not, like, fun to clean with a mask on. So these were just, like,
I had to put, there was like
make.
something I had to put on my mattress, like an allergen like case. Yeah, and what's funny is we just kind of, like, stopped doing that stuff. Because what happened was I think I got, like, another endoscopy after, like, a month of living like that.
Yes.
And they're like, you still have EE. It wasn't your dogs or anything that was causing your esophagus. Like, I'm still allergic to those things, but it wasn't causing my esophagus to swell up and get the food stuck.
Right, and you're not allergic enough to any of those to have, like, it be intrusive in your life, so... No,
like, I didn't need, like, I had an EpiPen for a while, but it was just, like, a precaution. Like, I wasn't that kind of allergic to any of those things.
Right, so, yeah, just to really emphasize, like, what you went through, because I feel like we really skipped over all the diets that you had to do. That got you nowhere.
Yeah, I was talking to our mom the other night about, like, how... I was saying this, like, there's literally a stretch of time in high school where I think I blacked out all medical procedures because, like, it was like a month-long elimination diet with, like, all the 8 big allergens. I don't remember it.
Yeah.
I don't remember doing it. I remember shopping for it one time at, like, a Whole Foods because that's where you can find all that stuff. But,
we went to
Hannaford. We went all over. But I don't remember the diet. I don't remember how crappy the food must have been, you know?
Mm-hmm. Well, we ate a lot of hummus, like chips and hummus, I remember. That's when I found, like, so delicious their coconut ice cream. I actually really only remember eating a bunch of chips and hummus.
I don't remember any of that. I don't remember.
Well, right, but that's trauma though.
Yeah.
It makes a lot of sense to me as like a therapist to hear that you don't remember.
Well, and what's funny is like
this.
my elimination diet. I can remember the time of year it was. It was there was like a month in between basketball season and baseball season, so we planned it for that month. I can't tell you when the elimination diet happened.
Yeah, I don't know. When was that timeline you just gave?
In between
Basketball?
basketball and baseball was when we did the
diet?
liquid diet, no food. But I don't know. I mean, it must have been
the fall.
The fall because I didn't do a fall sport.
Yeah.
Goodness, yeah.
Yeah, and you were expected to do that for 2 weeks. Which
Oh,
is
2 weeks? Yeah, again.
Yeah, we didn't last that long. Well, because I wasn't doing anything, and it was terrible. Although I say I might not have lasted that long. So I did it with you, out of in solidarity.
Yeah.
And I
think
remember
Mom did it too.
Yeah, she did. But I lasted like a week and a half.
Yeah.
But I have, I think, more memories of you being on the liquid diet, like when we'd eat dinner, and you'd have to like sit in the living room, and we'd eat it quietly, just because it was so awful. Because that you were expected to do for a month.
Yeah, I got sick halfway through that.
You got very sick.
And they're like, oh, you can either like eat and then start again some other time, or just like power through the sickness.
Well, so something important about this too, like you got sick, but that was because you were dehydrated, because your body. So you were taking these liquid drinks that, like people who are dependent on their G tube or are fed through like a feeding tube, that's what they have. So it has enough calories to sustain you. But I mean, were you playing basketball while this was going on? So you were like active?
No, so the season I remember. So like playoffs in Maine happened at Augusta. At the time, my team didn't make it to Augusta, but the girls' team did.
Yeah.
So we had what we called the last meal up in Augusta because
Red Robin?
Yeah, it was a Red Robin
Was it?
up in Augusta, and it was nice. Like my friends kind of like surprised me with it, and we went out and I had this big meal.
Yeah.
And then the next day, it must have been the next day. Because I think the girls won, and we went back to Augusta, and I brought like a water bottle filled with that awful stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, like it started literally like 2 days after basketball season started.
Yep. Okay.
And
I
then
was just thinking like burning calories. Like if you're being active while doing that,
Well,
like how hard that must have been.
yeah, so for baseball season, pitchers and catchers started, and I was a junior, so I was expected to go to that. But, I was a sophomore. And our team, was I junior? So
When?
liquid diet. Again, either way, whenever it was, when baseball season started, pitchers and catchers, they're like, all right, Nick's gonna go through the motions, but he's not gonna do the running because I had just lost 15 pounds.
In like 3 weeks.
Yeah, like we had this this photo up on the wall. We used to go to Sears, right, and take photos of
Yeah, we should show
like
that.
portraits, and there was like 2 days left in this liquid diet, and I'm sitting there. The bags under my eyes are crazy. You can barely keep my. I mean, it was like noon. Like it wasn't like a late night at Sears.
Right.
And
your
there's
eyes
a
are, like,
photo. It's
hollowed
me and Jess, and she's smiling all happy, and you can tell I'm trying. I really am.
Yeah.
But it just didn't work out. So
It did not work out. I mean, we bought the picture and it was on our wall until recently.
From the time we took it to like a week ago when you found a picture of us when we were like 10, and you're like, this is it.
Oh my gosh, no, we were like 3 and 5, and it's
in that photo.
It's amazing. It's the best picture ever. It is the most. It's straight out of the 90s.
Yeah.
It's amazing. If we can
We're
find
cute.
a copy of it, we'll post it because it was. I was like in tears laughing at this video. Or this picture. It's the best. So I made my mom hang that one up instead. I mean, it took a huge toll, and essentially, like your kid, like you weren't going to the bathroom anymore because your body was just not getting what it needed. So that you didn't do that for a month. if I remember correctly.
Oh no, well, I completed the diet.
You did?
Yeah.
Oh.
And then, well, the thing was, what happened when that ended, you go and get an endoscopy, and they see like, oh, did it work? And they're like, oh, you still have signs of EE. Then we're gonna do like, I forget the name of the diet, but it was like lamb and something else. Like right after this, and I was like, no, I'm not doing that.
Yeah.
That was the line for me.
Which we all supported.
Oh yeah, I was the first meal I had was McDonald's after that.
Yep.
Pre celiac diagnosis, clearly.
Well, so that's the thing in this timeline. So nothing comes of this liquid diet.
Yeah.
Nothing comes of the elimination diet. You still have EE. Food's still getting stuck. And then we realized, like, you know what? It's not working at Maine Med. We need a second opinion, or you need a second opinion. Is that when you went to Mass General, or did you go to?
No, I went to
Dr.
Mass
Hyatt
General
first?
in college. I went to Dr. Hyatt first, and the first thing he did, like we meet with him, he goes, "You're not going on any liquid diets or elimination diets." He goes, "That's ridiculous. We're not doing that here. You've been through enough." And I was like, "My guy,
Yeah.
I'd love to hear that." And then he, the first thing he does is an endoscopy, and immediately was like, "Yeah, you have celiac." Like
Yeah.
the thing is, he scoped further than. It's like when you're looking for EE, you stay in the esophagus. You find celiac further in the intestine.
In your intestines.
Yeah. And he scoped further and found it.
Yep.
Portland doctor never did that.
They did not.
So all of that, like it was weird, man. Like it was one of those things that like, had we never switched or something, like who knows when celiac would have been found, because they just weren't looking for it.
Right.
You know, and Dr. Hyatt wasn't either. And maybe like when he was down there, he goes, "Well, let's see what we got going on." Like,
yeah.
Because it has been such a mystery in my life. So he's like, let's just go a little further down. And yeah.
Yeah, and I remember Mom calling me, and I was in our driveway, sitting in my super cool Jeep that I loved so much, and a like family friend of ours had been diagnosed with celiac before, like a year or two before you, and that's the only reason I knew what it was. And she was like, "Yeah, Nick's got celiac."
I had no clue. So like the way she told me is my high school girlfriend was over, and my mom didn't want to tell me in front of her, so she's like, "Nick, can you come down to the basement with me?" And I was like, "This is weird. What's going on?" And she literally goes, she's like, "All right, so Nick, Dr. Hyatt called and said you have celiac." And I remember almost being like unfazed by it.
Yeah.
I was like, I don't know what that means. What's a celiac?
What's a celiac?
And yeah, it was just, she kind of explained it to me then, and like I remember the day, and I remember what I went and did afterwards, because I was like, I feel like this is important and it's gonna change some things, but I never I don't know, I didn't think much of it then because I didn't know what it would entail.
No. Well, so like an important statistic I think is it takes an average of 6 years to be diagnosed with celiac. And
I didn't know that.
yeah, so it's tricky because there's so many different symptoms. So you can present in so many different ways. Like I've met people now who didn't have any symptoms. They didn't have weight loss. They didn't have like diarrhea, vomiting, like any of the typical stuff. And then there's people like you who didn't really have that either, but you had weight loss. And I mean,
yeah, you look at photos of me in high school. I mean, it was like looking back, I was like, I didn't feel like I was malnourished or sick or anything, but like when you look back, you're either like, oh, Nick put on a lot of weight since then, or he was like, I don't know, you could see like the bones in my elbow and stuff, and like my jaw was real, like, I don't know.
Well, I have like a picture in mind of you. We were like up at a lake and you were swimming, and so you could see all your ribs. But like part of your story, right, with the blood transfusion is that for like a really long time in your life, you were very pale.
Yeah.
So because he wasn't making red blood cells when he was just born. So I don't know if that's actually why you were pale, but it's what we have always said.
It definitely didn't help.
And, you know, you live in California now, so that's not the case. But just this picture of you were probably like 9, and you were just like translucent and we could see every rib in your body. So that's like when I think of you being sick, like that's the picture that I think of. And like you weren't symptomatic of celiac.
No.
So I think you're like you said, no one was looking for it.
Well, and that's the thing too. They're like, oh, so like did you just feel bad every day? And either the answer to that question is no, I wasn't, or bad is just what I thought, like
that was just your baseline.
Yeah, like that was just my baseline. Like I don't think I knew if like I woke up one day I'm like, oh, I'm a little like in pain today, whatever. Like I just thought that's life.
Right.
I don't think I ever thought like this isn't it. I think it was just like this is it.
This is chronic illness.
Yeah.
Though. Like I don't think that's what you were thinking, but I imagine a lot of people listening are going like, oh yeah, same. Like it just is what it is. And I saw something on Instagram like literally last night saying like if somebody presented one day with my symptoms, like people would have sympathy, they would call out from work, they would stay home, but because my symptoms are my life every day, I'm expected to function at the same level as everybody else because it's just your life.
Mm-hmm. Oh, there's been times at work when I've eaten gluten and I'm like, this would send most people home. Mm-hmm.
Oh, absolutely.
Like I shouldn't be here right now.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the hardest parts is like I remember being sick at work sometimes and just being like, am I a real person sick or am I celiac sick? Mm-hmm. And if I go home for this, what if one day it's worse? And they're like, well, when are you sick with celiac? Because you went home before for this. So I think it's a really hard line. So do you remember like feeling better when you ate gluten-free? Because I also know people who don't.
No, I don't. Like, again, I don't remember ever being like, wow, this is the cure to my life. I just remember once I was eating gluten-free and then I'd eat gluten again, I'd be like, oh no, like this is, I don't remember feeling that bad, but I never felt better once I ate gluten-free. I just felt bad again once I ate gluten.
So yeah, going gluten-free didn't help really anything for you, but once you were gluten-free for a while and then were exposed to gluten again, then you would get sick.
Yeah, it was.
So I wonder if that really speaks to like how you were not like it was just your baseline, like you didn't know it was getting better.
I mean, it must have been because like I don't remember ever like in the day being like, wow, this is a real crappy feeling I have. Right. So it makes me think that like I was.
You were just used to it.
I was just used to it. That's just what sickness was.
Right.
Or what life was. But, I mean, that's basically it.
Yeah.
It was a real, convoluted, like,
it wasn't
mystery. Yeah, it wasn't like, oh no, I'm not feeling well, let's get tested for celiac. It was always for something, and we found celiac by accident.
Right.
But, like, I do think it's important to talk about what the other stuff was, because they are all like, I don't want to say related, but like EE is common in gluten-free people.
Yes. Well, and with celiac, because it's an autoimmune disease, there's comorbidities. So if your immune system is heightened and it's freaking out, it can turn on all these other illnesses. So it's really common with diabetes. Mm-hmm. Gone untreated, it can cause arthritis, fibromyalgia, like all sorts of other chronic illnesses. And eosinophilic esophagitis is one of those ones that goes hand in hand. I can't say for sure without fact checking, like if one triggers the other, like celiac does with like arthritis.
Yeah. Well, I know because Dr. Hyatt said that there's been like no real connection between celiac and EE.
Yeah.
And if you ever found it in me, I'd get to write the forward to his paper. But it's all gastro related, and that's how we were able to find that I had celiac and. I don't know.
Led it that way.
Yeah, it was good college essay that I was able to write.
Right. All right. Well, yeah, I think that is a brief summary. I mean, I probably have pictures from you going into endoscopies for at least 4. How many endoscopies have you had total?
It's either 13 or 14. I forget what the number was, the last one. I had to pay for the last one, so I think I kind of blacked that one out too.
Right. Well, and do you count the endoscopies where they had to move the food from your throat?
Oh, the emergency room ones? Yeah, because that's the doctor who thought he found Barrett's.
Yeah.
He's like, oh, of course you're choking on food. You have Barrett's. And I was like, that's crazy. And Dr. Hyatt's like, you don't. And I was like, well, we should check up again. And you should get another one.
Yeah.
It was basically like two every year. Like every 6 months I was getting one, unless there was an emergency room visit.
Right, where food was impacted in your esophagus. It wouldn't pass, so you could breathe, but was...
It's super uncomfy.
Mm-hmm. Which is like the understatement of the century, because
Yeah,
you wouldn't go to the
threw
emergency room for uncomfy.
No, I threw up under a bridge one time because of it.
It's not funny, but the way you say, like, I remember
I
it.
gotta be able to laugh at it, and like it's happened at work where I was just like, I need to go.
Yeah.
And they're like, okay.
And they just push the food through.
Yep. Well, yeah, when I was at work, I just threw up, but yeah, they had to go in and they do the endoscopy and just boop, push it down. But that's the story of my...
Yeah, accidentally diagnosed at 17.
17, I was, and that's like, I had known what food was, so that's why it sucked when I couldn't eat food, and that's why I think Nick's Gluten-Free Kitchen started to really take off, because Jess wanted to make me food that I could eat. Yeah,
we made pizza rolls and Pop-Tarts. Cheez-Its. I mean, also, just real quick, there wasn't options when you were diagnosed.
No, man, that's what I'm saying. And I always joke, too, like, when you were diagnosed, I was like, mad. You called one day and you're like, yeah, Nick, like, I found mozzarella sticks and I found all this. And I'm like, girl, what?
Yeah, like, I'm in tears at Wegmans. I'd been diagnosed for, like, a week. And I'm like, oh, my gosh, this is great.
She called my mom and we were in the car. And she was telling us all this over speaker. And I'm sitting there, I'm like, I had, like, the first cookies I had crumbled in the bag. Like, they didn't even make it out of the bag as a cookie.
Yeah.
And she's getting, like, mozzarella sticks.
Totally different. And
it was a quick transition, though.
I was diagnosed 5 years later.
It was 5 years later.
We'll do some math. We'll get back to you on that, but it wasn't long.
That's how we'll start the next episode.
Yeah.
5 years have passed.
Yeah. But yeah, no, it wasn't long. And that's definitely why we were doing
I thought it was shorter, though. 5 years seems long to me.
Oh. I was diagnosed in 2015. 16.
Oh, it was 2012.
Oh, so that's not 5 years.
4?
I don't know.
We're definitely math majors.
I'm a social scientist.
Well, I think that wraps up this episode of Gluten-Free Coast to Coast. Mm-hmm. Clearly not coast to coast, which is fun.
On the same coast today.
On the same coast.
Be sure to check out our other episodes where we talk more about that series was called The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. Mm-hmm. So if you want to hear more about what it's been like for us being gluten-free.
Since being diagnosed.
Once we were diagnosed. Definitely check those out. You can find those on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and on our website, nicksgfkitchen.com.
And YouTube.
And on YouTube, you can see me baking cookies.
Yeah.
And so thanks for hanging out with us. Thanks, Nick, for bringing all your equipment to the other coast.
Yeah.
And stay tuned for my
Jess's
story.
All right, we'll see you next time.
See ya.